right, and welcome to another extra session. In this episode, we're going to touch on TOGAF, the Open Group Architecture Framework. I think it's important that you have at least one architect that's certified in TOGAF or some other industry standard framework for delivering architecture and software. But I wanted to get this episode done before we jumped into part 3 of Solution Approach, which is a subseries of a greater playlist on model-driven anything. So let's get started. In previous episodes, I've talked a great deal about the Enterprise Continuum, or TOGAF's Enterprise Continuum, and our fictitious company is Arco, and so I would call theirs the Arco Continuum or Arco Enterprise Continuum. So this is where you have your architecture building blocks leading into your solution building blocks in delivering your systems and software. My bigger focus is on the enterprise repositories, or the company repositories, where we've got requirements repositories, architecture repositories, design stores, and our configuration management database. Leading into the architecture repository, where we have our architecture landscape, we also have our reference library, our governance around our standards that we're implementing, whether inside the company or outside the company. And all of this is where we're going to manage our deliverables. In this session, we're going to focus on the architecture development method, or the ADM. And when we're looking at the ADM, where our deliverables are concerned, we're basically looking at the inputs, the steps within the input, most importantly in this session, the output. This is where our architecture deliverables are, the artifacts that we're going to be producing to support reporting and analytics. So when we're going around the wheel, we see that we move from preliminary into the architecture vision, where again, we have inputs, steps, and outputs. And business architecture, the same thing. And as we're going through the wheel and getting into various aspects of delivery, you can see that eventually we get down to technology architecture, the inputs, I want to say process, but it's referred to as steps, and the output. So you can see here we're drafting the architecture development document, we're drafting the solution approach, and so on. We get into E, opportunities and solution. We're able to look at, well, here are the steps that are taken, and here are the outputs. And this is where we're doing solution analysis. We continue to do that in an iterative manner. You can see everything in here is iterative as it's moving through requirements management and delivery. And eventually we get into the migration and planning stage within a delivery effort. And this could be small or extremely large delivery efforts, whether you're following the agile methodology or simple waterfall, although I'm not a fan of waterfall. Nothing is waterfall, in my opinion. We're constantly working through an iteration, coming back to each one of these areas, even as we're going into the change management prior to deployment itself. What's very important to understand in any architecture framework is that we are creating deliverables that support the stakeholders' views, viewpoints, and concerns. So you can see here that a stakeholder has many concerns. They have many viewpoints based on many views of the architecture. So as we're moving through, we're using a taxonomy of architecture viewpoints. We're building catalogs, and eventually we're getting into matrix or matrices, the core diagrams that are used for data architecture, application architecture, and technology architecture as we move through the taxonomy of architecture viewpoints that TOGAF gives to us. And when we're looking at delivery, we have a strategic architecture for the company that may not be handled in just one sprint, one project or program, but over a period of time to support the views and viewpoints and concerns of each one of the stakeholders. So in the project that we're using or we're going to be reporting on in the next part is taking a look at the capability architecture, the architecture building blocks as we're doing the solution building blocks to actually deliver the subject and the strategic architecture over a period of time at a different levels of detail. So requirements starts at a high level of detail and then gets to a very detailed view as you're going in through an iterative implementation of the architecture. Same thing with the solution approach. The solution architecture is just a high level view and perspective of the solution design leading into detailed design and development. So it's very important to understand in your architecture framework how you're going to deliver your architecture in order to meet your stakeholders' concerns, viewpoints, and views, right? We're using the deliverables out of TOGAF, the Open Architecture Framework, to address our artifacts, everything that we do, whether they're dealing with our asset catalogs, our matrix, a relationship matrix, specification matrix, relevant to all the diagrams that are taking place using the various building blocks that we have. All right. And that all is managed and maintained in the architecture repository. Now you can keep your artifacts, your deliverables as high level as you want. It's very important though that you're meeting the stakeholder concerns. So as we're going around the wheel here, we move from the preliminary aspects of delivering the company all the way down to the preliminary aspects of delivering a specific project. We have an architecture vision, we have a business architecture to support the architecture vision, and we need to have an understanding of our information system architecture, our data, our intelligence. We have various technologies that we use as we're delivering our solutions all the way up to deployment. TOGAF has a modeling framework that we use. It's called ArchiMate. Now, you don't need to use ArchiMate. I'm going to go through each one of these here in just a moment, but you can use simple boxes and lines to start. And if you wish to use various aspects of ArchiMate, you can. So everything in architecture is driven by a motivation across, whether you're talking about passive structure, behavior, or the active structure. So when we're looking at the business architecture layer, in ArchiMate, you have various elements that you can use that represent that delivery. So you see up here a business actor. In UML, the business actor is just a stick figure. So you see a marker up here that helps you understand each one of the elements within ArchiMate for delivering your architecture. So you can certainly use these elements in ArchiMate to deliver, whether you're talking about the business layer, or you're talking about the application layer, or you're going down into the technology layer, all the way down into the implementation and migration concerns for delivering your system and software. I tend to use UML to represent my architecture, but I use ArchiMate to represent the motivation of each one of the stakeholders. So here, ArchiMate gives you some tooling here that helps a great deal, especially when you're dealing with non-technical stakeholders, because everyone understands what a stakeholder is, what they're driven by, the assessments that are taking place, all the way across the aspect of delivery. They understand what their requirements are and their capabilities. Let's go ahead and go into this particular view. So when we're going through each one of these drivers into assessment, and we're basing that off the strategy concepts from resources that are available to the capabilities that are needed, courses of action, also dealing around your localization, where your branch offices are, where your company is located, where the various delivery concerns are that are located. So I really like the motivational models that are available through ArchiMate. So I just wanted to point that out as we're going forward. When we get into the rest of the delivery, you're going to see some ArchiMate models that we're going to use in our artifacts to deliver the architecture. All right, last but not least is requirements management. Everything that we do in delivering systems and software is based on requirements management. I cannot overemphasize the importance of having enough requirements and understanding whether they're existing requirements, which is current mode of operation, present mode of operation, or your future mode of operation. You can see everything we do in delivery is iterative as we move around the architecture development method in implementing whatever the customer desires are. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I just wanted to get this episode out. I was going to talk about this in Solution Approach Part 3. However, this is a longer, more detailed conversation that I wanted to keep separate, to keep that next video, which is very important and may be long, as short as possible. All right, so thanks very much for watching, and until the next episode, happy modeling.